Hey everyone, welcome back to ACT Math Quick Hits. We can make one small change by watching these videos. It doesn't take much time, doesn't cost you any money, and it's going to help improve your ACT math score. So there's our rundown of the math section of the ACT, and let's get right back into it today. All right, so this one looks pretty complicated. So it tells us for all positive values of A, B, C, and D, right? So we're dealing with positive values, and then it gives us this equation when 1/2 A B squared plus C equals D, which of the following expressions is equal to B? All right, so there's a couple ways we can go about doing this. We could just power through the algebra, or we can use a Desmos hack. I'm going to show you both, but I'm going to start with the Desmos hack. But we have to be a little bit crafty when we're using Desmos for this one. All right, so what I need to do is I need to identify two of these variables to call x and y in order to put these on my graph. Since I'm dealing with b and I want to find b, then b has to be one of my variables I'm going to define as x and y. And the other one I'm going to do is I'm going to do d because it starts as an equation equal to something. All right, so I'm going to put everything into Desmos, so I end up with 1/2 times a. So I'm going to pick some value for a. I don't know, I'm going to pick 3, right, a positive value for a. I'm going to have b, for lack of a better term, my unknown. And again, I can pick x or y. I guess I'll pick x. We'll see how that works, right? So I'll do x squared, and then the rest of my equation. So I got to pick something for c. I'm going to call it 5, and then that's equal to my d value, which will say y, right? Because that's generally how we start with an equation. You always have y by itself. So there's my first equation, right? It gives me this graph, a parabola here. So now in order to figure out which one is equivalent to it, right, I can just go down the line and put every single one of these in and see which graph matches up. But there will be a little bit of a catch here, and I'll show you a little bit of a shortcut that'll help this go a little bit quicker because this is really tedious putting all these values in, right? So we have to start with a square root. So we'll need the Desmos keyboard to put our square root in. And then now we just have to correspond everything that we substituted in the first equation with the answer choices, right? So it says the square root of, so the first thing we need is an a value. Well, what did we call a in the top? We called a 3. So we need to make sure we put a in on the answer choices as 3. All right, what did we call d at the top? We called it y, right? And what do we call c? We called it 5. All right, close parentheses and then divided by 2. So, right, it gives us a little error right now because we're not equal to something. Again, I'm solving for the b value, which we called x. So we do need to put x equals in order for this to give us a graph, right? So we look at our graph over here and these don't match up. So that's not it. All right, so we got to put in another one, right? Which would mean typing all this in again. And again, that's the most tedious part of this. But if we highlight and then do Control C, that's copy, and then Control V, that's paste, it pastes our last answer, so we don't have to fumble around with the keyboard down here, and then we just have to change the values to match up, right? So the first one is 2. The next part is our D value, which again was Y, minus our C value, which is 5, and now divided by our A value, which we said was 3. So if we look here, let's just push this down a little bit, right? So it's not the red one that doesn't line up at all, but look at this blue one, right? Like all of a sudden now our blue one matches up to half of the black graph. Curious. Well, it's not the entire thing, so it must not be it, right? I don't know. Well, let's just keep going, right? So let's put the next couple in. So the next one is 2 times our D value. So again, our D value is Y, minus our C value, which is 5, and then all of our A value, which is 3. All right, well, that's obviously not it. It doesn't match up at all. And then what do we got? We got one more to do. So again, another Control V to paste. And what do we have? We have D minus C, so we have Y minus 5 all over 2 times A, so 2 times 3. Let's see, this is a purple graph. And so again, like let me turn off this blue one because this one kind of lines up. We look at our purple graph, like that's not it either. So it's obviously not red, it's not green, and it's not purple. The only one that makes sense is this blue one. Let me turn off these other ones because it's really hard to see. You know, the blue one encompasses part of this graph, right? So now we got to kind of go back to our problem and understand that, all right, well, I'm dealing with a squared, right, in my original problem, and now I'm dealing with a square root. So the domain of our square root is actually going to be limited to just these positive values. It kind of alludes to that in the question where it says all positive values of A, B, and C, right? And so our best choice for this one, well, not the best choice, the correct answer for this one, again, depending upon that restriction on the domain, is that choice B. So, I mean, with Desmos, not necessarily a really difficult problem, tedious to put all this stuff in, and then understanding that it's not going to match up exactly because of the restriction on the square root function. So if you want to be done because you saw the Desmos hack, be done. I'm going to take a few minutes and show you the algebra to power through this one. So this is like a bonus video, right? Because you get a Desmos hack and then you get an algebra video here. All right, so if we're going to solve for b, that means we're getting b by itself. So let's subtract c from both sides of the equation. Try to use that original one so I can write less. So I have 1/2 a times b squared equals d minus c. And this is going to get really cumbersome and tedious in here. So I have a lot of stuff on the left here, but it's all multiplication. I'm going to get rid of my a first. So I'm going to divide out a so it cancels, and then divide this side by a. So what we have is we have 1/2 b squared equals d minus c over a. Right? This is a mess of algebra here. All right, so I got to get rid of the 1/2. So again, I would do the same thing. I would divide both sides by the half. But like it's going to get really clunky over here if I divide by a half. Well, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. It's called the multiplicative inverse. So instead of dividing by a half, I could just multiply both sides by 2, right? So doing this is the same thing as what I was trying to do down here. I'm just going to scribble this out because I'm not doing both of those operations. I'm doing just the times 2, right? And so when I multiply this side by 2, right, think about it being a fraction, so it's just going to multiply by that numerator value there. So I have the b squared equals, well, the 2 needs to be multiplied by both the d minus c, because they're in the numerator, and then divided by my a. Now my last part is just the square root the entire function, right? So there I am, the square root. I don't need to write it out again, right? That takes more time. There's the square root of 2, parentheses, d minus c, all over a, which is what we saw for choice B. So, like I said, a little bit of bonus of algebra and Desmos. Obviously, the Desmos is a little bit more straightforward, but it was kind of tedious on this one. Maybe just by remembering a few of the algebra steps, it could kind of get you there, what you're looking for. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I know it's not the most exciting stuff that you could be watching out there, but your future self will thank you if you like and subscribe. That way you can keep getting a little extra math ACT practice. Thanks again, everyone.